Hashtag Biashara Tuesday is live back on air to you. Of course, if you are watching us and you have any feedback to give us, do so on our social media platforms and also where we are streaming live on YouTube, KUTV Kenya Live. That's where we are at. Facebook, KUTV Kenya. On Instagram, tag me. On Twitter, tag me up at Richard_Okenya. The hashtag to use there is the hashtag Biashara Tuesday. If you're watching us from your television sets, the SMS/WhatsApp numbers here on your screen. Send in your SMSs and WhatsApp messages. I'll be able to read them. Any questions that you have, I'll see. And as I'm seeing here already, there are a couple of guys, just honorable mentions, of course, as we go on with the show. Caleb Untweka saying good morning. I am following this from Kisii County. Of course, shout out to you all the way from Kisii County. Willie Davido, Nairobi, Kenya is tuned in to the best business show at the moment. Thank you, Willie. Mose Wapi watching from Nairobi, Saika. Mose, thank you a lot. Kalale Wayuna Wakamkuji. That's quite a long name. Interesting. Watching from Kitale. Kitale Kibomet. And he also, I think he's used a few Kalenjin words there. Can't understand, but thank you for tuning into the show as well. Do tell us, by the way, we asked a question. It's halfway through the year. It's the first day of the second half of the year. How are your financial goals looking like at the moment? Any that you made during the beginning of the year? Is there any progress, or have you backslid in one way or another? Love to see that feedback as you also tell us where you're tuning in from. Mtoto wa Mariam anasema Okenya, that suits you well. Thank you. Good on the wordplay. Runda is watching. Asante sana mtoto wa Mariam. Say hi to the people of Runda. James Gumbe TJ tuned in from KM Market behind Kenyatta University. Shout out to all those people at KM Market who are tuning in, and James, of course, showing up this morning. Give us your feedback on the question I just asked just a few moments ago, which is, what are your financial goals, or how are your financial goals looking like as you go on to the second half of this year? There's a report here which I am accessing, which is called the Usawa Agenda First, which was first published. And this report is entitled, Are Our Children Learning? It was published in 2010, and it concluded that 2 out of 3 class 2 children will not read a simple paragraph. This learning gap can be seen, of course, or noticed when you take a look at the results from last year's KCSE examination. Of course, 100% transition into secondary schools. However, what do we do with the learning gap that is witnessed by some of these graduates? And that's where the Core Academy is coming in. Of course, under the Sochin Research Institute, which is focused in matters of applied social sciences. Mr. Noah Miller and Dr. Rosa Ko are joining me here on set to give me an insight into what are the efforts they're doing through Core Academy, and of course what the Sochin Research Institute is all about. They're here already on set. If you can see them, send in your questions. But at this moment, let's just dive into this conversation on digital learning and the situation in the country as of the moment. Welcome to this show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Right. Really glad to have you guys. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah.
It's a bit early, but I'm awake. We're ready to go.
Yeah. Dr. Rosa, how are you?
Here.
Yeah. How's the why did the Sochin Research Institute decide, of course, to now go into digital learning and through the Core Academy? I think if I can begin with you, and also an introduction, of course, of yourself, given that your name is also Dr. Rosa Ko, and the Core Academy just bears your name there.
My name is Rosa Ko, and I'm a doctoral in social science, especially political science. But I did a lot of quantitative mathematical training during the career and also academic training. And the Core Academy, the name comes from apparently my last name. My last name is the Chinese character meaning the highest esteem and the highest pinnacle you can reach in your life. So it has a really deep meaning, and I feel that a lot of African students that I met and have studied with them together and tutored and trained them, they all had this aspiration to be the highest they can reach in whatever their career or field they are in. So that's why the name came from that. And we can explain more about Core Academy.
All right. Mr. Miller, welcome to the show once more. You have been mostly in, I'd say places of government, the offices of the Prime Minister in Kuwait, the U.S. State Department. how do you come in matters of education? Of course, having a background in matters of political science, and now the Sochin Research Institute, and eventually the Co-Academy. How, maybe a brief intro into how that journey has been looking like.
Right. So I've been a global nomad for much of my life, working in different places, such as the Middle East, Asia, and now Africa. And I came to Africa, particularly to South Sudan, in 2013.
Right.
To assist on a consulting project through Deloitte to help build up capacity of the South Sudanese government in the public affairs area. And from there, we settled in Kenya.
Right.
Kenya was a perfect place to bring a family to. And while I was working in South Sudan, my family was here in Kenya. And we liked it, and we stayed.
Right, of course.
We haven't moved since. And although my background is more with government, I have always done lots of training of government officials. So my job particularly was about public affairs and communications. And I did a lot of communications training with various government officials, sometimes very senior officials. And after that, I settled down in Kenya, in Nairobi. And I was a distinguished visiting lecturer at the Aga Khan University for 2 years, where I taught social media and crisis communications. I've also taught many professional development trainings to corporations, to NGOs, to parastatals. So I have quite an extensive training background.
Right. So that's how got to interact with academia. Right.
That's right.
Now, Dr. Rose, what inspired the idea of coming up with Co-Academy, especially in 2022?
It's a very long journey that we came to this far. Of course, the coronavirus was one of the many variables that impacted our decision.
Right.
And over the years, when I taught in various countries, I taught in the US, in Korea, South Korea, in Peru, and now in Kenya. And I think globally and universally, I had the same feeling that when you reach the college level, even at the graduate school level, that I taught, the students kind of struggled, and they realized that they didn't have a foundational, fundamental skills that were necessary for them to be successful at whether in college or at the job level. And I decided that it's best to intervene at the early age as possible. And that means I intervene at the primary school level, secondary school or middle school. It's very important to identify the weaknesses or strengths of your academic interests in a way that the parents and teachers and tutors can intervene appropriately and they get help. So that's how we came up with this idea.
Okay. And now it's a digital learning platform, as I understand. Why did the approach go through towards innovating in digital learning than maybe starting an academy where you have a physical location where students are just coming in, but informed the digital learning vis-a-vis the, of course, traditional classroom as we know it in Kenya?
I think the world changed quite a bit with COVID, as we all know, and it opened our eyes to new possibilities, to really leveraging technology to reach a wider market than is possible through having physical locations. It's impossible as a private foundation or think tank to build multiple locations across Kenya or even across East Africa.
Right.
So we can leverage technology to make learning more accessible, and it's a lot more scalable, and we can reach new audiences, and we can also innovate by having novel teaching approaches through technology. And I think during COVID time, people had the first contact with EdTech, and it's opened up new doors, and we want to then bandwagon on that and help people using EdTech.
All right. Dr. Rosa, how many students have been there so far who've enrolled to the platform? And according to, of course, this report that I was looking at, it also includes the performance of the national examination by secondary students in Kenya last year, and we witnessed a very high fail rate. How do you plan for KO to address some of these challenges and learning gaps?
Those are very difficult questions, but I try to answer at my best ability.
Okay.
So right now we're at the stage where we're trying to analyze the market. So what are the needs and how we can fit into that, how we can develop the product or the platform to cater to these needs. So we did our research outside of Kenya, and we had a lot of responses from the countries such as Nigeria and Tanzania and Rwanda and Ethiopia. And all the results of our research of the market were very different from our hypothesis and our prejudices in a way. So what we are trying to do is, there are a lot of companies and also institutions, they say that they're providing EdTech, but it's not really EdTech because they're offering Zoom courses, and which also is not a homeschool. Homeschool is not a Zoom online classes. When you think about it, homeschool is more about you still have a structure enough to as the mainstream classroom setting, but you do it at home. So there's a lot of misconceptions about EdTech in general. So ultimately what we want to do is we want to assess the market correctly, and then also design the app mainly based on math, because we got a lot of requests that they are very poor and weak in their math, and also they don't know what the right system is for them, but they know that the current existing systems are not right for them.
It's not working, right?
So yeah, exactly. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So we're trying to find the best learning app, self-study app, focusing on mathematics that gives them an idea of how to get a fundamental knowledge about mathematics. So at a different age group, yeah. So that's
okay. How many students have enrolled so far?
We had a lot of interest for the offline. So in music, interests me. So we are trying to. I'm networking with the people who are already have a music studios in different areas. So we are trying to get students who are interested in offline. Right. And then we are trying to accompany the online courses that. Yeah. Okay. So that's what we are trying to do.
All right. Now, Mr. Miller, she mentioned that for sure the current system might not be working, but however the alternative is what is lacking. This isn't working, but I don't know what is working. How different is the curriculum, you will say, at Core Academy as compared to the curriculum currently being offered in Kenya?
Right. So you mentioned early on the Usawa Agenda report, which talks about the learning gaps, and that, together with the COVID experience, was the impetus to delve into EdTech. So you see children waking up early in the morning, standing on the road at 5 o'clock, getting a bus and going to school. And now there's hardly any break for kids. They're going to school nonstop. And given the effort put into education by the students and by the teachers, of course, you have to wonder, why are learning outcomes not improving? And that's not just me saying that. That's also the Usawa Agenda report. And you mentioned earlier the KCSE results. They really haven't dramatically improved. And now, of course, the CBC is being implemented across the nation now, and we'll have to see how those results pan out. But clearly, there needs to be a way to complement what is being done currently in the education system. And given the research we've done, we've looked at the research reports by many organizations. We've conducted our own research earlier this year with the help of some postgraduate students from the LSE, the London School of Economics. And we founded the Co-Academy to provide an alternative and to kind of identify the learning gaps and then fast track the learning. And for that, we resort to a combination of curriculums. We don't think there's any one best curriculum. And we have personally experienced curriculums in Asia, in Europe. I grew up in Germany, for example, in the US, and now in Africa. And we think that if you take the best of all the curriculums, international and local, and look at best practices for exams and pedagogy, we can package something new. So that's where we come in, by having our own approach, looking at the best practices. We can offer something which will identify the problems, and we can provide the right fix to whatever learning problems people have across subjects.
Right.
It's not just math. Math is one which we feel is very important, and we've actually had incredibly high interest in math. And we're talking math for maybe primary to high school students. And the reception we have from people interested in the service is that the foundational skills are not quite there.
Right. Because that's the most important part
exactly.
of this, right?
And the math skills are so important for other subjects too, for the sciences, the natural sciences, potentially for programming and coding.
Yeah.
And then for jobs, for architecture, engineering, it's so vital. So what we want to do is have an AI-powered learning app focused initially on math and provide that as a prototype to customers, and then branch out to other subjects as well.
All right. Do you think that digital learning, Dr. Rosa, is the solution or going to be a game changer in academia in all of Africa in general?
That's a very difficult question, again, because, of course, it's a very complex issue, as you know. And personally, I don't believe that digital learning can be a complete substitute for the traditional classroom setting, because the teachers' communication and contact physically in a way that they can communicate with the students, not just not through online, but I think the really talking person to person, face to face is very important, especially now. And I think the communication is very key in learning. That how do you identify the problems and how do you communicate your weaknesses and your strengths to your teachers, your parents. And also parents need to communicate with the teachers in a way. And I don't think the digital really fixes all the problems we have. But at the same time, as Mr. Noah said, we to make it accessible and scalable, we do have to use technology to make it work. And I do feel that you have to use technology in a way that it's very fruitful and effective for you. But that requires a lot of thinking and planning and a very good execution. And so all these things have to come together to make that tech successful.
Right, to become a wholesome program, of course. Talking about effectiveness, Mr. Noah, there are co-academies boasting, of course, of international teachers on the platform as well. Some trained from the University of Pennsylvania, tutors maybe like yourself from the London School of Economics as well. How different are they from, if any, if at all, you will say, from the teachers in Kenya, or Kenyan teachers for that matter? How different are the teachers on co-academy from what we have in our classrooms in Kenya?
I think all the teachers try their utmost to provide good services to the students. And in that regard, I wouldn't say there are huge differences. The international teachers, they bring best practices and different insights into teaching, whereas the local teachers bring in, obviously, the local perspective. And we do not want the co-academy to be an external solution. And even though we have international teachers, the idea is to mainly train local teachers to maybe a slightly higher standard and have localized education provision. We don't think an external approach will work in Africa.
Right.
It really has to be homegrown. And that is often the weakness of current edtech solutions. They just provide a cookie-cutter approach where you take something from the West and you apply it and you paste it here in Africa.
Right.
And we have been here long enough to know that doesn't work. And we have extensive networks and contacts with local teachers, local data scientists who are working behind the scenes on the EdTech platform. And we believe firmly that content has to be localized in terms of the imagery, the language, the examples, the context, because otherwise the kids can't relate to the teaching and it will be less effective.
Right.
So we are all about localized content and bringing in the international best practices on top of that.
All right, that's a good approach. If maybe I can segue a bit, I've seen it especially happen in the world of startup and business. Coming in with expatriate information about the environment, and also maybe finding that the solution you're applying does not work. Maybe a little outside of academia, Kenya is facing a very huge issue of unemployment. Graduates coming out of institutions, 100% transition, going into secondary school, going into campuses, a lot of technical training institutions as well coming up in the country, and very few jobs to complement those graduates. Is there, in its element, if any, a way or an approach to also contribute to solving this problem of unemployment in the curriculum of core academy? Is there a way this is also eventually going to help us alleviate that pain?
Of course, the way we envision the core academy to launch all these thoughts and our premises. But at the same time, the job employment issue is not as you know, it's not a black and white issue, and it's a very complex issue, and requires a lot of different resources, simple and complex resources. You can look at our paper.
Right.
We wrote considerable about that issue. As we wrote in op-ed, and I don't think it's a good idea to convince the students, like secondary school students, that university is the only right way. So we were, as a Social Research Institute, we worked a lot with the TVET, and we worked on the invention, and we worked on how to patent your products, and we worked about how to have inquiry and how to have curiosity about life in general, and so that you become a very curious person in general, that you know how to come up with good questions to ask. And I think that's pretty much the beginning of your journey for whatever you do. And I think the job is only, job and employment issues will only come as to answer that question that you have. What is why am I here, and what can I do to make a meaning of my life? And there are a lot of opportunities when you look at Africa compared to developed countries. The way I think about Africa is, if you really look outside of your shell, outside of the school and home environment, and outside of your community, there are a lot of things to do in Africa.
Right.
And there are a lot of things needed by young people to do for this country.
Right.
So I think you just have to be very, and they all work hard too. A lot of African students I've contacted so far and have known, they all work hard, and they have a lot of passion, and they are extremely, extremely passionate about learning. And I think we need to channel that as a mentor to the right direction. For instance, there are a lot of work in agriculture, and I always advise my students, why don't you look for the non-traditional markets that you can be successful, and you are smart, you are educated compared to your older generations. So there is a lot of opportunities you can do. But as far as the core academy is concerned, I do believe they will create a lot of jobs. As Mr. Noah said, that we have to hire a lot of local teachers and students, and we're currently networking with a lot of data analysts and the data scientists. So you will, I do believe they will create a lot of jobs. And in the process.
Capacity building there, right there. That's some of the good stuff I like to see. And one of the ways that the government in Kenya is also trying to fix issues of unemployment is, bringing in a new curriculum. I don't know if you guys have had a look at the CBC, which is competency based, as opposed to one that was purely on academia previously, which I was a part of up to this moment. Now, that competency based curriculum, do you, maybe just a comment from each of you before I get to see any two questions we have online, 2-3 questions here. Do you feel like the CBC, this competency-based curriculum being offered by the government of Kenya, is also something that's along the way of what Core Academy is fixing, or are there ways that, are there gaps that can still be filled up? Maybe start from you, Mr. No.
I think what you alluded to earlier about skills is very important. So at the core of the question is, what is the purpose of education? Is it to become an educated person, academically qualified, or is it to prepare a person for the job market? And I think maybe the CBC is doing a bit of both. We're not forgetting the academic qualifications, the foundations you have to have in core academic subjects. At the same time, you have to be able to communicate. You have to have critical thinking. You have to have problem-solving skills. And these skills can be imparted through a variety of subjects, and they also apply to the job market. So I think the CBC is going in the right direction. As well, I would say, the CBC is very important because it has more regular assessments. So your life does not just depend on how you do in the KCSE.
After 8 years, 12 years, yeah.
So I think a really innovative aspect of the CBC is to have periodic examinations, whether it's in class through your teacher or through annual tests at the end of each academic year. So it provides the students and the parents with more feedback. And it gives everybody a better idea to see if a student is suited towards further academic studies at university, or to maybe join a TVET and get some practical training. So there's no easy question to the skills gap debate in Kenya. And what I would say is that you have to have both the skills and the academic qualifications. And at the other end, you have to have a market which creates jobs. And I just wonder if that skills gap debate sometimes is a bit misleading. Because I wonder what skills do employers expect of recent graduates? If they're smart, you can train them on the job. For example, just a quick anecdote, when I began my career, I first worked on Wall Street as an analyst for a big US investment bank. And our analyst class comprised of business studies students, about half the class, and the other half of the class were poets, what we called poets. And these were
Wall Street?
Poets. So these are people who studied English literature, or maybe religion, or maybe some natural sciences. So very different from the business studies people who only focused on business for the last 4 years in their undergraduate, and they supposedly had the skills. I'll tell you, the poets, after 6 weeks of training at the bank, were at the same level of business knowledge as the business studies majors who had done that for 4 years straight. So as long as the poets were smart, they caught up. So I think the point of the school is to nurture and create smart, inquisitive individuals who can then very easily be trained on the job if they're smart, if they're like the poets.
What she was saying, getting a look at what is outside of your learning environment, outside of your home, there's much more opportunities, right?
Absolutely right.
Yeah. Right. Now, there's a few questions here online I think we can have a look at. First of all, of course, feedback, positive feedback here, getting from Juma Frederick. I don't know if you know who that is, saying that really glad to see my friends Noah and Dr. Rosa talking about digital learning. Those are great human beings.
Thank you, Juma.
Would you agree? All right. So here's a question that I'm receiving from Zomo. They're asking whether, is it all online or are there face-to-face classes that we can enroll in?
So we have a vision for the Co-Academy, which begins with classes both offline and online in the beginning. So it's a hybrid approach. And we've had many inquiries for physical teaching still, because that's what people are used to. At the same time, to have that scalability, we do want to push more on the online. And eventually, we want to go from purely online and physical to a AI-powered app, which anybody can access around Africa at a very reasonable price. Because sometimes education can become very expensive, especially if you go into private education, if you're talking about international schools. That's a barrier. And we don't think there should be any barriers to education. It should be really affordable and accessible to everybody.
Right. All right. Here's one more maybe. What courses do you major in and how can learners apply? And this is coming from John, watching us from Ruiru. What courses do you major in and how can learners apply?
So we have a website already called Co-Academy. thecoreacademy.com. You can Google us too, and we do have a Facebook presence, so you can have many ways of getting into the website. And at the same time, we do accept the courses they want us to tailor to their needs. For instance, interestingly enough, we had a lot of interest from and requests from Ethiopia. We want to learn conversational English from a native speaker,
right?
Because we want to perfect our English. So we find your school to offer a very reasonable price curriculum in conversational English. So it was for all ages. And we were trying to look into that needs, and we found that the payment system for between Kenya and Ethiopia is not really set up yet. So we're hoping the Safaricom going into Ethiopia will make a big payment for us there. So there is a lot of other issues besides the admin issues that we have to tackle at this point to make the courses very seamless.
All right. Thank you very much. Of course, that has been Mr. Miller and Dr. Rosa Ko of the Ko Academy, and also our co-founders of the Sochin Agency. Make sure that you're checking it out if you want to get into digital learning, and also if you're a student out there who wants to contact them, know how to get into some of these courses, offering from mathematics, English, even piano classes. If you're interested in music, they are here to help you. Check them out on all the social media platforms. And I just remembered I've been trying to avoid this question, which I received. People usually love to know what the government can do, especially in Kenya. Always personal efforts, but also what can the government do. I don't know if you have any bit on any advice or tip you feel like what can the government do to patch in that gap as well. You know, we cannot all individually fill in the learning gap, but also if we have the government coming in as well, I think that'll be really helpful. Anything that you feel that the government can throw in, Mr. Miller and Dr.
I think the government's already doing a lot. Education it's a tough area to tackle,
right?
Because it's so intangible. But I think the government can maybe look at how it allocates its resources in terms of the education budget. So look at needs-based allocation per county, and continually train high-quality teachers. And maybe lastly, try to limit or reduce the student to teacher ratio. That's very, very key.
Right.
You can't teach effectively if you have a classroom of 100 kids. I know it's unavoidable in some cases, but train quality teachers and have more of them.
All right.
I want to say that I'm very proud of all the Kenyan students who are still ongoing to school. And a lot of other countries, the students are on vacation, but I noticed that the Kenyan students are still very troughing along this long and very tough journey. And keep up the good work, and Ko Academy will try to come up with really fun events for them to have some kind of relaxed environment and break from the current study schedule. And also good luck for the people who are preparing for the KCSE exam in November.
All right. Do you have any last remarks? I realized she just sent her last remarks. I was going to ask you guys to do that. But is there anything that maybe we've missed out, or any last call to guys who might not or might not be aware of Ko Academy, just on that camera? Mr. Miller.
I would say, to echo Dr. Ko, the Kenyan students work extremely hard. They get up early, they spend long hours in the classroom without much of a break. And my message is persevere, work hard, because learning is really lifelong, and you will get the benefits down the road. Be well assured of that.
Right. We'll get the benefits down the road. That has been Mr. Miller and Dr. Rosa Ko of the Ko Academy, and also the Sochin Agency. Something else that you're going to get benefits down the road is if you tune in to the end of the show at 10 in the morning. It's 8:30. It's only 8:30. We have 1.5 hours to go. Much more happening in this show. Our conversation coming up next is the welfare and, of course, the progress of poultry farming in the country. What can we do, and what kind of systems can we implement in poultry farming to gain or to realize more revenue from that field of agriculture? Don't go too far. #Biashara Tuesday, still live on air here with Richard Okenya.